Alright guys, welcome back. Hopefully you can see my camera in the background. If not, you have to listen to the sound of my sweet voice. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Now you should be able to hear me. Welcome back. Hopefully you can see my camera in the background and hear my voice now. If not, you'll have to just listen to my voice. Now, I wanted to do a deeper analysis on the fact that this is an initiatory realm, right? We're in some sort of initiation. And I was going to do a standalone video where, I'm just outside talking. But I thought, this video breaks it down quite well. And I want to add some stuff on top of that. So I'll be interjecting at some points. So we'll get into this video. I'll link the video, of course, in the comments below after I'm done. But let's begin. Now, the initial part of this video is actually talking about Lewis Carroll and his obsession with this 4-year-old girl, Alice, who this book, Alice in Wonderland, is based off, right? We're going to be talking about Alice in Wonderland, if you didn't see already. So he's obsessed with this girl. He basically grooms her till about 11 years old. And then the family essentially kicks him out of her life due to probably some ominous events that may have happened. Basically, it's showing that, he really wasn't in a right state of mind or like a pure state of mind from what we can assume, right? That's doesn't really say anything concrete. But the guy's essentially grooming the girl. I think he asks for her hand in marriage at age 11, and this was like in the 1800s. And this guy Lewis Carroll, he's a bit older than 11. But essentially he makes the story, and it's quite interesting, the esoteric secrets that he encodes within it, right? So let's discuss.
The story begins with Alice, a girl trapped in the monotony of her world. While her sister reads a book without illustrations, she feels restless, as if her mind is destined for something greater. Her dissatisfaction is the first indication that she is awakening from the dream of common reality. It is no coincidence that she is a child, for in esoteric tradition, the child represents the initiate, one who has not yet been fully conditioned by the structures of society. Then, the white rabbit appears.
Okay, so before the white rabbit, for those that haven't read Alice in Wonderland, obviously she falls into a sleep state, right? She begins to dream from after her sister starts reading, and then she falls down the rabbit hole. And it's interesting that it represents us, right? She's the child. Our soul, let's say, is the child, and it's very interesting to see grown men or grown women acting like children because they haven't matured, right? So this element of being self-centered is the first kind of layer of awakening, right? You're not concerned about anybody else. You're only focused like a child on your own survival, your own benefits. Me. What can I get out of it? It's not important what I did, right? Don't take accountability. It's only important what they did to me, right? So this idea, this paradigm of victim mentality and narcissism is very prevalent in a child. They're essentially very narcissistic and predisposed to like a victim mentality because they're trying to survive, right? So this element of survival, getting past this, is the first layer. And you can say the soul, not the spirit, the soul, when it's first created, is like a child, doesn't know any better, and it's maybe more so engulfed by the AI ego aspect, right? The just the mental idea rather than the spirit that hopefully is alongside it, hopefully is also engulfed within that psyche. All right, so let's discuss the rabbit.
Dressed in a vest and holding a pocket watch, he mutters, "Oh dear, I shall be late." Without hesitation, Alice follows him. This is the breaking point from the ordinary world, the threshold that separates everyday reality from the realm of mystery. In esoteric terms, the white rabbit plays the role of the psychopomp, the initiatory guide who leads the soul through spiritual transition. He is the equivalent of Hermes Trismegistus in Hermetic tradition, Virgil in Dante's Divine Comedy, or Anubis in Egyptian mythology. But the White Rabbit is also a slave to time. He is obsessed with the hour, urgency, and the fear of being late. Here, another occult concept emerges: time as a prison.
Okay, so important aspect here. So the rabbit, once you've gone down the rabbit hole, the rabbit is there, right? Once we've gone down the black hole, the whatever is there. Well, let's characterize if the rabbit is time, right? We have this idea of Saturn being time, right? So Saturn, the guide, or Hermes, the guide, and there is an association of Hermes with Sophia, at least the one that I've seen in, let's say meditation travels, right? Hermes is with Sophia in below the earth. If we characterize Sophia as Satana or the Leviathan, as mythology leads us to believe, um, I don't know. I don't know what Hermes would be, to be honest. But we do have a characterization of Sophia with a demiurge, right? So Hermes would essentially be the demiurge. If Saturn is also time, Saturn, time, and then on our way out of the black hole, as we go through the rabbit hole, we first go through Saturn. Saturn becomes the initiatory guide, but then we finish with the moon, right? With the white rabbit on uh, the moon representing a smaller, quicker cycle of time, right? A monthly cycle, whereas Saturn is the larger cycle, the 28 years, or maybe the whole, maybe even dominating the whole time to begin with. Um, but yes, that rabbit would essentially be that, and there might even be a connection of a rabbit with Saturn, maybe in gematria. I'm not sure, forget, but I do remember making some sort of connection. So let's continue.
In alchemy and Hermeticism, linear time is considered an illusion imposed upon human consciousness. Following the White Rabbit is akin to entering this cycle of worry, clocks, and anxiety, an endless chase where time rules over existence. Alice falls down the rabbit hole, but her fall is not merely physical, it is symbolic. In all esoteric traditions, the initiate must descend into the underworld before they can be reborn. In the mysteries of Eleusis, neophytes spent days in complete darkness before receiving revelation. In alchemy, Nigredo is the stage of the decomposition of matter before its transmutation into gold. Alice undergoes the same process. She falls, floating past disordered objects as her perception of reality fractures. When she lands, she finds herself in a hallway.
Okay. So that alchemical process I talked about in my video, Lead to Gold. If you haven't seen it, go watch that. I do talk about some things that they may be doing to us through that process. Um, so this idea of lead to gold, lead represents Saturn. Gold represents the sun. So we start with the material obsession of Saturn, the egoic, self-centered principle, maybe, uh, and then that turns through all the planets supposedly into gold. Right, the ego is purified into this incredible louche, I think, into the soul of this Christos principle, right? This golden principle. And it's interesting because both the sun and Saturn, if you look at their magic squares, both of them actually still equal 666. Just different versions of it potentially. So, could they just be using that process to create a more purified form of energy that they can then extract? Maybe some like the darker, harsher aspects of the energy, while some like the pure, more refined version, right? So that's an interesting idea. Now, uh, this checkerboard, if you look at it, very interesting the way they painted it. It looks to be like the negative reflection, like when you polarize the camera photo, right? So this brownish color would rather be black, and this bluish color would rather be white. Kind of reminds me of that memed dress that everyone was like, "What color is it? Is it this or that?" And it looked like both, right? It's an illusion. It's a representation of the black and white. So her landing on the checkerboard means after she's gone through the planets, she's landed on what is considered the earthly plane, right? Which we'll get into in a second, what that represents in the story.
Filled with locked doors. This represents the liminal state in esoteric initiation. the intermediate space where the old world no longer exists, but the new one has yet to be revealed. At the center of the room, she finds a golden key and a bottle labeled "Drink Me." Here, another alchemical symbol emerges. In ancient
That's interesting. The drink me could be a reference to the waters of forgetfulness that people, souls in the astral, have to drink before coming to Earth, right? The liminal state, as they described it, which could be, you could say it's also a purgatory state, like Dante's purgatory. Uh, but I'm not sure. I think we're kind of in one of the last simulations potentially. I don't know, at least from my perspective. Below us could be things like Tartaria or whatever, Tartarus rather, where all the AI demons, all the Titans got sent below the Earth. Um, but even then, they're not too far away, right? And above us are just more realms of this matrix, the astral realm, the various dream states that come with it, and heaven as we know it.
transformation rituals initiates consumed substances to expand their perception. In the Eleusinian mysteries, a sacred drink was consumed. In alchemy, the elixir of immortality was sought. Alice drinks the potion.
Okay, so this idea of the psychoactive um, substances still create that initiatory effect that I've been talking about in other videos as well. When you take that substance, you essentially open yourself up to these beings who then come in, and now all of a sudden you begin dealing with their own initiation rites, which could be the same, could be the same, you know, practices or just the same agenda, uh, in which they tell you like, hey, this initiation, you got to go through these trials and tribulations, you got to do all these things for us, just like you hear in the Bible, or you hear in this whole life as a school idea, where it's like you got to go through these tests, you're being tested, you have to pass the test, you have to let go of your karma, you have to deal with your trauma, which some of those aspects are true. Yeah, you don't want to be bound here, and by doing so you eliminate these minds, but the larger agenda is probably not uh, to get you to do that. Um, they have something else in mind, likely.
And her body begins to change size, losing control over her own form. This is the collapse of the ego. In alchemy, transformation begins with the dissolution of the previous identity. In terms of psychological manipulation, this is the moment when the victim experiences a dissociation from reality, making them more vulnerable to reprogramming. Alice passes through the door and enters Wonderland. Here,
So real quick, same thing happens in the army. It's an MK Ultra technique, right? They dissolve your previous identity. They dissolve your previous ego. They create a new one, right? So they shave your head, tell you a whole bunch of stuff like forget about who you were. Now you're gonna fight for these people who are your brothers, they're your family. You need to go fight because you have to save your country. Blah blah. Programming, right? They reprogram you, and when you're in that state, you're more vulnerable and susceptible because now you've dissociated. So whether you take on those substances, whether you go down the various rabbit holes, the conspiracy theories, things like that, they also serve a purpose to dissociate you and create inner conflict within, right? So if you constantly don't know what is true and what is not, you're fighting within yourself, you're dissociating and you're fragmenting your psyche. Uh, and let's say an analogy of this could be like the more projections of light shined upon me, the more shadows I have. So the more um, your psyche is fragmented, the more shadows are created, and the more likely for those shadows to overtake that psyche within that specific personality, right? Um, and they could all even be contained within one mental element, just different fragments, right? But they know what they're doing, and the trauma creates these fragments, which then creates karma, which then creates trauma, which keeps the loop going, which is, as we'll see, all an illusion.
everything becomes more chaotic and symbolic. Her first significant encounter is with the blue caterpillar, who smokes his pipe and asks her the fundamental question: who are you? In esoteric tradition, the master does not provide.
That reminds me of what the Gnostics talk about in terms of the archons asking the soul after death, "Who are you and where are you from?" And if you don't know how to answer, right? Or I wouldn't even deal with them to begin with, but let's say they force the encounter in some way. So I don't exist. I'm an illusion. This is not real. You're not real. I'm not real, and I'm from the one true ineffable one. I'm from the actual true um, unified being, right? Where no polarity exists.
Answers, but pushes the disciple to find them on their own. The caterpillar represents the initiatory teacher, similar to gurus in Hinduism or mentors in secret societies. But he is also a symbol of transformation. Soon, he will become a butterfly, just as Alice must evolve on her own spiritual journey. From this point onward, Wonderland becomes a labyrinth of trials. Each character Alice meets subjects her to mental challenges, absurd logic games, and contradictions. This mirrors the initiatory rites of esoteric societies, where the initiate is tested in ways that challenge their understanding of reality. In mind, control systems, exposure to contradictory information is a technique used to fragment the psyche and make it more susceptible to suggestion. One of the
Exactly.
most representative
So as you saw, the control systems put in place are all illusions. They're all designed to get you essentially to sell out, essentially to forget, make you forget even more who you are, who you were, and what you're doing here, right? To prevent really any further research or further investigation, or so we're told, right? Maybe they're serving as a catalyst, but in my opinion, these things are limitations, right? It's very hard to follow that inner truth when you're constantly working every day and then you're tired and then you need to go to sleep, right? Or you need to eat or whatever. But what I'm trying to say is even the judicial system, the financial system, education system, all these things are based on false foundations, right? The judicial system is based on the straw man in all caps name, which isn't even you. Like they've separated you and then they've sought to control you because they can't change the actual projection. They can't change you, but they can change the reflection. So they can show you a different reflection and convince you that that is yours or that is you.
encounters in this phase is the Tea Party with the Mad Hatter and the March Hare. This is not just an eccentric gathering, but a representation of time as a prison. The Mad Hatter is trapped in an eternal loop, forever stuck at tea time because time has stopped for him. This reflects a concept found in Hermeticism and occult philosophy. Time is not linear, but those who fail to understand this become trapped in its endless repetition. In alchemical tradition, mercury is a key element, and the Mad Hatter was inspired by 19th century hat makers who suffered from mercury poisoning, which drove them insane. This is tied to the idea of wisdom taken to the extreme, where deep knowledge can lead to alienation and madness.
Yes.
Another fundamental
So
character in this
that can happen again with um, taking those psychoactive substances, spending too much time down rabbit holes, and chasing secrets that you're not ready to hear potentially, um, overloading and burning your system, your nervous system. This also can happen with breath work, meditation, yoga, kundalini yoga, all these things that are designed to essentially short circuit your system. Um, this is because they want you vulnerable to deception. They want you vulnerable to programming. And in that vulnerable state, you seek help, you seek answers, you seek validation, gratification. You're seeking, right? You're seeking outside of yourself.
phase is the Cheshire Cat, who appears and disappears, leaving only his unsettling grin behind. In esotericism, he symbolizes hidden knowledge, something that is never fully revealed, but only understood in fragments. His famous phrase, "We're all mad here," is not just a joke, but an allusion to a Gnostic principle. In a world of illusions, the only truth is madness. Alice begins to realize that the rules of Wonderland are arbitrary, that there is no real order, only chaos disguised as logic. This is the point where the initiation reaches its questioning phase. The initiate starts to see beyond the illusion. However, she is still trapped within the game. She has yet to reach the breaking point where she will confront the ultimate authority of the system. This first
Right. So the only truth in illusion is madness, right? Truth can't fully exist in something that is untrue. Um, so that means even it would have to be untrue itself. Um, so that's a deeply philosophical question that may arise, like what really is true, right? The only thing that is true is that potentially everything is an illusion, and that's paradoxical in nature to say, right? Um, but as you can see, I'm sure you can all relate to this process that essentially we've been going through ourselves, whether it's natural or um, scripted or guided by them. But um, you can relate to the fact that you kind of like start saying something's wrong, you start waking up, you start questioning, and then the final element is confronting the authority that runs this place and saying, hey, even you're not real. Like, even you imposing all of these things that are not real can only lead me to conclude that you're not real and I'm not real, and this is all just a dream. So when you're dreaming, when you wake up in a dream, when you become lucid, you still don't wake up from that dream. You're just lucid, that you're aware that it's a dream. So then you begin to do things you might like. Maybe, you whatever, start to fly, whatever, take advantage of the dream. But the dream only ends when you say it's over. When you say, I want to stop dreaming. I don't want to keep creating whatever I want to do, right? So this, but the idea of getting your desires can be beneficial because you can get them out the way, right? Say, okay, I did all that. But it's also dangerous because it can keep you bound to this reality. It can keep you coming back because you may not get everything you want. You may not fully figure it out from that aspect. So chasing that again is going to lead you down a sort of detour, potentially. And only until you realize that's also a dead end can you then say, okay, I'm done, right? But you may run out of time, physical time, until then, before then you get reset, then your memory gets reset.
The first half of the story shows her going through ego fragmentation, initiatory confusion, and symbolic trials, but she has not yet reached the great revelation. She has not fully awakened, but she is no longer the Alice who fell down the rabbit hole. Alice has passed through the initial phase of her journey. She has experienced the fragmentation of her identity, the questioning of reality, and the chaos of Wonderland. But her trial is not yet over. Now, she must face the ultimate manifestation of the system, the authoritarian power that governs this absurd reality. Her path leads her to the Queen of
Interesting that it's a queen, right? Queen, Sophia, Matrix, Ma, Demiurge, connection.
Heart's garden, a place where logic remains a farce. There, she finds the gardeners painting white roses red because they planted the wrong color and now fear execution. This is a symbol of reality manipulation. Instead of accepting mistakes, they are hidden, masked, and altered to create the illusion of order. It is the reflection of a system where truth does not matter, only the illusion of control. Then, the Queen of Hearts appears, screaming her infamous order, "Off with their heads!"
Off with their heads!
The Queen is the symbol of absolute tyranny, of arbitrary power that does not require reason, only fear. In esoteric terms, she represents the demiurge, the entity that in Gnosticism imposes a false reality upon the spirit, condemning it to ignorance. Her reign is based on blind obedience. Her subjects fear her punishments, but they are rarely carried out. She is the embodiment of domination systems that exist only because the dominated believe in them. The Queen's croquet game is a key scene in the second half of the story. It is played with flamingos as mallets and hedgehogs as balls, and the entire system is complete chaos. Nothing functions properly, the rules constantly change, and the outcome depends entirely on the Queen's whims. Carroll did not choose these elements randomly. In Victorian society, flamingos were symbols of luxury and false elegance, while hedgehogs represented the common people. The Queen wields flamingos as tools of power, symbolizing the aristocracy, and strikes hedgehogs, who attempt to resist and escape. It is a satirical representation of power dynamics, where the lower classes are used and discarded at the convenience of the elite. But it is also an allegory of illusionary control. The system only works as long as everyone pretends it does. Alice begins to see the fragility of the world around her. Unlike the other characters, she does not fear the Queen, and with each challenge, her confidence grows. This is the final phase of esoteric awakening, where the initiate starts to clearly see the structures of power and their true nature.
Right.
At last, Alice is taken to trial in a ridiculous court. She is accused of a nonsensical crime, the evidence is absurd, and the rules shift at the Queen's convenience. This scene symbolizes the farce of justice in a world ruled by arbitrary power. The trial is not a mechanism of truth, but a tool of control. The legal system, here presented as a parody, exists only to validate the ruler's power. But something has changed in Alice. She is no longer the confused girl who fell down the rabbit hole. She has gone through the initiatory process, she has seen the chaos of Wonderland, she has understood that the rules are an illusion. And at the crucial moment, she faces the Queen and speaks the words that shatter the spell. "You're nothing but a pack of cards." And with that single phrase, Wonderland collapses. This is the moment of final revelation. In esoteric tradition, the initiate can only complete their transformation when they see beyond the illusion. Alice has realized that the world she has been trapped in is fragile, a construct based on fear and obedience. By defying it, she destroys it. It is the equivalent of Buddhist enlightenment, of Gnostic transcendence. Then, Alice wakes up. She is back in the real world, in the field where it all began. But the most unsettling question remains unanswered. Has she truly awakened?
Right. So has she truly awakened, or is she just back in another dream, another astral realm, which could have let her down here to begin with? But again, right, the dream does not truly end until you defy it and say it is a dream. I do not participate. Right? She did not participate in the court hearing by defying the actual ruling or whatever. Now, doesn't mean I'm suggesting go out and break the law or anything, but your simple defiance of it, your simple refusal to participate in their systems, and you know, disagreeing to their contracts, revoking them essentially, because this is also a simulation of contracts, of oaths. Saturn deals with contracts. Mitras, um, which is the old sun, the oldest religion, from what I've discovered, is the one that mediates the oaths. So again, deals with the contracts. Meet binds Ra. I forgot what. Obviously, an allusion to the sun, but a binding act essentially is what Mitra means.
For decades, Alice in Wonderland has been the subject of multiple conspiracy theories, suggesting that Lewis Carroll's work is
42.
far more than just a children's fantasy story. Some believe it is a coded narrative about mind control and psychological manipulation, while others suggest it represents the effects of psychoactive substances or even serves as a hidden message about secret societies and their operations in the world.
All three, probably.
Its symbolism is too precise to be mere coincidence, and the connections to occult practices and mind control programs have been studied by researchers of the mysterious for years. One of the most unsettling aspects is the link between Alice in Wonderland and mind control techniques, specifically K-Ultra. This program, developed by the CIA in the 1950s and 1960s, used drugs, hypnosis, disorientation, and trauma to fragment the victim's psyche and create new controlled identities. In the story, Alice undergoes a similar transformation, falling down the rabbit hole, losing control of her size, and facing illogical and absurd situations that challenge her perception of reality. These same methods were used in MK Ultra to induce dissociative states. In programming techniques, victims were subjected to nonsensical phrases and extreme environmental changes to destabilize their identity, exactly what Alice experiences with the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, and the Queen of Hearts. The constant distortion of reality in the story has also led some to suggest that Alice in Wonderland is a disguised narrative of hallucinogenic drug experiences. Carroll wrote the book during a time when drug experimentation was common in intellectual circles, and the references are undeniable. The blue caterpillar smokes a pipe, which is a clear allusion to opium, a widely used drug in Victorian England. Alice changes size after consuming liquids and mushrooms, a representation of altered perception similar to LSD and psilocybin effects. Even falling down the rabbit hole resembles a trance-like state induced by psychedelic substances. It is no coincidence that decades later, the book was embraced by the psychedelic culture of the 1960s as a symbol of the trip into other dimensions of consciousness. Another theory suggests that the story is laden with occult messages and references to secret societies. Carroll had deep knowledge of mathematics and philosophy, but was also fascinated by riddles, inverted logic and symbols, elements fundamental to mystery schools and Freemasonry. Wonderland.
So if you guys have noticed some of the numbers that pop up throughout the images, that's also done on purpose, not from the guy that did the video, but the actual art renditions of the book. So he's likely encoded a lot of, kind of subliminal messages through that method as well. But I want to speak to the fact that, okay, so this, what they're talking about is initiation and the initiation experience on the physical realm as well, right? Not to mention in terms of the numbers that we see, right? First one being 33. A lot of people see the number 33. Now, what is 33? 33, first of all, the degrees of masonry, but also 7, because it's based on the Mithraic initiation. This is Mithraism, just restructured. They have had 7 initiatory rites before they became a full adept or whatever, right? So 7 and 33 are the same, and we can see this in the English alphabet. If you look at the 7th letter of the English alphabet, it is G. You'll find that in the Masonic symbol. But also, if you keep going after Z and you get A, 27, B, 28, you'll get G is 33. So 7 and 33 are both encoded in that. And you add them together, 7 plus 3 is 13. 13 is the next layer of the Masonic, I think, stage, because you get the 13 families, right? So it goes 33, then 13. And that's interesting because for me, it started out with 33. It turned into 733. Now, 733, likely, this is being affected by the astral realm, more than likely, also. Now, these practitioners, which are in the astral realm, which are then trying to get themselves seen, observed, and kind of use you to manifest them, uh, are using these old tactics potentially, right? But they're also potentially trying to initiate you to begin with from the astral realm. So for me, that was likely this Great White Brotherhood, which is full of these former Masons, Plato, um, what's the other Greek philosophers, uh, and other historical people throughout time that are kind of existing, especially religious figures, right? Existing in this brotherhood and operating as initiatory vehicle, potentially for this whole system for the demiurge, because just like the Masons, the Ma sons, the Ma, the Archon, the Ma sons, are doing the same thing, right? So what they'll do is just like they do in Hollywood, they're predators. They'll look for someone that is on the up and up, right? They know they're awakening. They know they're going to be popular in social media. They go get them and cut them off before they reach that ultimate awakening or the ultimate fame, and they need to then control them. So by getting them to participate in these nefarious activities, they can then blackmail them. So the analogy would be like, hey, we need you to essentially sell your soul to us so that we can give you this rite of passage, this awakening that then is controlled by us, because we'll give you power, right? So you have the knowledge, but you're not actually awakened. You're not, again, awakening is to decide to stop dreaming, right? Decide to not participate in the dream. But if they give you power, then you become stuck and you become bound to the dream because you become even more addicted. Not to mention all the heinous acts and rituals that they'll get you to participate in, which then creates trauma, fragments your psyche, but also creates karma and weighs you down even more because then you feel guilty for those actions, right? And then good luck answering to yourself, essentially, in the astral realm, because you're like, oh dang, I'm making a huge mistake. But also they then use you to then set up the new system as a new flock of shepherds, or a new shepherd rather, that leads the flock of sheep. So then you become another, digital puppet for them, or alien puppet, in the next simulation, because now you've been initiated into their cult, their managerial system. And these numbers again, 33, 7, whatever, 11, 11 is also like a portal, right? It's in new age circles seen like a portal. Or you could see it as an initiatory rite, the beginning of initiation. You start seeing 1111, you start waking up, right? 11, two pillars, the other 11, other two pillars. You walk through the pillars, kind of like you see in the NDEs of the pillars of this Greek architecture, right? So, you kind of say, well, no, I don't. You might have to say, I revoke this initiation. I do not wish to participate in your initiatory rites. Let me wake up by embodying my own true spirit, right? Um, and again, this can come after using psychoactive substances, after basically searching for these entities yourself, trying to make contact with them. They can come from your guides, right? Everyone probably has guides, and they don't know any better. They're like supervisors of the system. They probably were humans themselves, and they became great salesmen, got promoted, and now they have to sell the propaganda to the other humans to continue the system, right? Continue the reincarnation system.
Land operates as a world governed by hidden laws, where only those who understand its logic can navigate it. Alice is an initiate, passing through trials similar to the rituals of esoteric societies, where aspirants are subjected to challenges that force them to rethink their understanding of reality. The Queen of Hearts represents the tyrannical authority of the system, an echo of the Gnostic demiurge, the entity that keeps humanity trapped in a false reality. By the end of the story, Alice realizes that the Queen's power is an illusion and defies it, a message reminiscent of occult teachings about awakening from the illusion of material existence. Even darker interpretations claim that Carroll subtly exposed the dynamics of abuse within the Victorian aristocracy. His obsession with Alice Liddell, the real girl who inspired the story, has been debated for years. In this context, Wonderland could be a metaphor for a world where children are subjected to the will of powerful and capricious adults, a reflection of abuse disguised as games and absurd logic that prevents the victim from comprehending their reality. Each of these elements suggests that Alice in Wonderland is far more than a children's story. It is a tale layered with symbolism that has sparked suspicions for over a century. Was Carroll merely a storyteller, or was he delivering a hidden message about the true workings of the world? The book remains an enigma, and its impact on popular culture suggests that its meaning runs far deeper than it appears. Just like in Wonderland, nothing is what it seems, and the real answers may be hidden behind the veil of the story. At its core, Alice in Wonderland is not just a whimsical tale, it is a roadmap for awakening, disguised as a nonsensical dream. Whether viewed through the lens of esoteric initiation, psychological fragmentation, or societal control, its message remains the same. Perception is the key to power, and the world is only as real as we believe it to be. Alice's journey mirrors the path of every individual who has ever dared to question the nature of reality. She starts as an innocent, accepting the structures around her, but the deeper she descends, the more she is forced to confront contradictions, absurdity, and illusion. Wonderland is a perfect simulation of a controlled system, a world where rules are arbitrary, logic bends to authority, and fear sustains power. But its greatest weakness is that none of it is real. This is where Alice in Wonderland becomes something more than fiction. It is a warning, a reminder that we too live within constructs, social, political, even psychological, that only exist because we accept them. The Queen's authority is meaningless the moment Alice sees through it. The court trial collapses once she refuses to participate. Her true power is not in fighting the system, but in recognizing that it has no real control over her. Yet the most unsettling question remains. Did Alice truly wake up, or did she only step into another illusion? The story doesn't tell us, because it's not just about Alice. It's about us. If you want to keep uncovering hidden knowledge,
Again, great question. Did she just wake up, or is she just back in the astral realm, ready to go down another rabbit hole, right? Another black hole, another simulation. And then this idea of not fighting the system, because when you fight it, you offer resistance to it, and when you offer resistance to it, you deem it as real, right? You are giving it more power. Um, but if this is an initiatory realm, then initiating for what purpose? Um, or is it just something that we created and we decided to wipe our own memories, or rather put these beings in charge that really actually have no power to then wipe our memories for us and then extract this energy from us to further the system and create this loop for us to break out of? uh, did we do that to ourselves? possible, but the existence of these beings cannot be denied, I think. And maybe they developed their own agenda, or maybe they already had their own agenda and it was designed specifically for us. Again, who knows? But, you know, simulation to simulate what? Because none of this stuff is actually real. And if it's not real and doesn't actually show anything real or test for anything real, because this likely doesn't exist in the realms that we're from, everything is actually unified, then testing and simulating for what? Right? When you simulate something, it's like you're a jet pilot, right? You go into a flight simulator. It's because you're going to do that in real life. But we're not going to do this in real life. And even if we were, it's for the purpose of protecting the pilot. We don't need to be protected in the eternal realms, right? We don't need to be um, tested beforehand to make sure we're not stupid, or at least not anything that I know of or can imagine. Because in those realms, everything is perfect and no harm can actually be done. Even in the astral realm, no harm can actually be done because it's an astral body. It's not your true self as well. It's a projection. Um, so why are they running these initiations? Why is potentially Sophia testing for resistance and trying to create rebels? Because it's designed, right? We have this tyrannical god. Tyranny breeds rebellion. It's designed to create people that stand up to it, and the other people that don't, she doesn't want to deal with potentially. Um, so she is this Satana figure, but she is also that god figure, right? That tyrannical god. They're both two sides of the same coin. Anyways, leave a comment letting me know what you thought. I always enjoy reading you guys' comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.